Guys, Tara here, and welcome to my Handmade Halloween video series. This is day one, and I am going to be making a Batty shaker card featuring this really cute stamp set by Simon Says Stamp. I'm going to start with my card base, and I am making a square card here, and it's going to end up being 4 1/4. No, I apologize, just 4 by 4. And I am going to do some custom coloring on all this by making it my own colors with some distress inks. So first I'm going in with my Seedless Preserves distress ink, and I am just covering the bottom part of my card base. I used some post-it tape to mask off the top portion so that I didn't get the back of the card all messy with distress ink, and I'm just going to put a nice solid coating of this Seedless Preserves distress ink on there. I absolutely love this color combination for Halloween. The purple and the black is my favorite. There's something perfectly spooky and mystical and yet not too scary. I don't know, I just really like it. And it's not your traditional black and orange. I mean, purple is pretty common for Halloween, but it's a little bit different than the orange. So I'm really doing lots of Halloween stuff with this color combination here. So now I've got a square that I cut using a pierced square die by My Favorite Things, and I am just going to color that also with the Seedless Preserves and then take that stencil there by Cart Bella, and I am going to use that to create a spider web background over the top of my purple Seedless Preserve. So I'm creating my own pattern paper for the front of this shaker card here. So now I'm just positioning the pattern on the little square where I want it. I know that I'm going to be cutting the middle out to create the shaker portion, so I kind of want to maximize the spider webbiness on the portions that are going to be left. So I am trying to just kind of position that where I want it. I don't know if you saw there, I used some temporary removable adhesive to stick this down onto my craft mat, and then just the post-it tape to position the stencil where I want it. So my original thought was that I was going to kind of not have it be super dark, and I used hickory smoke to come in over the top of this purple. And while that did create a really cool color, and I really liked that kind of grayish purple that it made, I was really going for more of a black contrast here. So I did end up busting out my black soot distress ink to put on top of that hickory smoke, and it ended up looking kind of cool because some places are a little bit lighter where the hickory smoke kind of shows through, and then some places are darker where that black soot's got it nice and really black. So I really like the way that it came out, kind of a almost foggy, spooky, Halloween-y look. So I'm just going over a few spots just to make sure that it's nice and dark around where those webs are so that you can really see the contrast when I peel up the stencil. And now comes my favorite part, where you get to remove the stencil and see how awesome cool it looks underneath. So I'm just going to peel up all that post-it tape, and then here comes the big reveal. Voila! I've got those really cool purple spider webs poking out from that black background. I really like the way that this turned out. So now I'm going to take a circle die by We Are Memory Keepers, and I'm just going to position that where I want it on this little panel, and then run that through my Big Shot. So I'm going to save that for another project because it's super cool. And now I'm going to take a piece of craft foam, and I've cut it to a square that's bigger than my square for my project, and I cut my circle out. And now I'm going to position that using the circle and take a pencil and just trace the outer edges of this piece, and that way I can trim this craft foam down to be the perfect size. I was going to cut it with my square die first, but I didn't want to have to line the circle up perfectly, so I decided to start with the circle and work backwards. So I put a little star in the upper left corner of each of those pieces, and that's just going to help me make sure that I line up the craft foam with the front panel correctly later, so that I don't have to spin it around and around trying to figure out which way it fits on there. I'll be able to just pair those right up. So I just trimmed right inside the circles, or right inside the lines that I drew, and you can see I'm matching up those stars, and that just fits on there perfectly. So here I have a little piece of transparency, and I just cut that down. I didn't measure or anything, I just cut it to fit behind there. And I'm just going to use my ATG gun to adhere that transparency behind my front panel. And I just use transparency that I bought at Walmart in the computer section. I think it's made to actually print through your printer, so I use the side that's slightly rough. I face that forward because I'm going to stamp on it later, and it allows a little bit more grip than the slick side. So I figure might as well take advantage of the fact that it's made to run through the printer, right? So now I'm just going to trim off some pieces that are poking out there when I line those back up, and now I'm going to move on to the next piece of my project, which is my little kitty cat focal point. So I have this really fun stamp set by Simon Says Stamp. It's called Trick or Treat, and it's got these really cute animals dressed up for Halloween. This is not a new set, but it is new to me, so I'm super excited to be using it this year. I saw lots of videos last year featuring it, and I was very envious. I wanted it, and so now I have it. So I'm late to the show, but that's okay. So I used my Memento Tuxedo Black ink to stamp little kitty cat here because I am coloring him in with my Copic markers. So I've put the colors that I'm using up in the corner there with the caps. I'm not doing any super fancy coloring. Probably the fanciest thing that I do is try to color this little guy with orange tabby like my Kitty Egon. So I started out with my YR14 as a base layer there, and I am going back in with my much darker YR18, and I'm kind of putting a little bit of darker shadows where there would be some shadows, and then I'm drawing in those little tabby lines to kind of add a little bit of pattern to him here. And I am leaving his little snout and his tummy and the tips of his tail and his ears white. So that's going to be a little trick that I blend into the white later. So I went ahead and blended that back out with my lighter tone, and then I went back in and kind of darkened up those lines just a little bit with the darker tone yet again. And here's where I decided that I needed an even lighter color to kind of go from the yellow to the white. So I brought in that YR61, which is kind of a super light orange, and just put a little bit on the outsides before going in with my R20 and coloring in his little ears and his nose. Now, I didn't think that was quite pink enough, so I came in with this other pink tone, which wasn't much pinker, so I just let it go. So this is my colorless blender, and I'm going to use it to soften the edges so that it just blends perfectly into his little white tummy there. So that is how I colored the kitty, and now I'm going to make his cape match the purple scheme on the card. And I didn't have purples that matched exactly the tone of that Seedless Preserves. That Seedless Preserves is a really unique, fun, like fuchsia, pinky purple. But I just went with my violet tones and said, hey, purple's purple, and I'm going to roll with it. So this is pretty basic. I'm using 3 different shades, and I started with my lightest shade to saturate the paper, and then I came in with my mid-tone and put some shadows in, and now I'm coming in with my darkest, which is that V9, and I am putting in the really dark shadows where I want those. And I want ultimately his cape to be darker. I don't want it to be super light, so I did kind of add a little bit more of the dark up at the top. Now, my V9 does not blend very well with my mid-tone, my V25, so I am using the tip-to-tip technique where I'm taking my lighter marker and touching it to the tip of my darker marker and then bringing it in to blend out and create that tone in between those 2 markers so that they blend. And then once I'm done with my mid-tones, I am going to come back in with my lightest color, and I am going to blend those purples back out and create a nice smooth blend. I really like the way you can almost see on camera, like you can watch the blending happen. Those colors worked really well for that. So now that Mr. Kitty is all colored, I'm going to fussy cut him out. Well, first I'm going to come in with my white gel pen and fix some of my boo-boos because I went a little bit outside the lines. And then I'm going to darken in his eyes and his nose with the black gel pen. I decided I didn't like his pink nose, so I colored it in. So I have fussy cut him out, and then I'm just going to take my Black Soot Distress marker and I am going to paint the edges so that it looks like I cut him out perfectly. I did have to leave a little bit of white space around his little whiskers. I'm not quite talented enough to trim those out. Little tiny skinny whiskers, but otherwise I did fussy cut right up to the line on him. And now I'm going to start assembling my card. So first I took the Halloween die that comes with the coordinating die sets for this stamp set, and I took this Batty border die by Memory Box, and before I started this project I cut a whole bunch of die cuts out of some Simon Says Stamp black cardstock. Now this little scripty Halloween word is so dainty and fragile. It's absolutely gorgeous, but I wanted to make sure that it was nice and sturdy on my card, so I did cut 3 of those out of my Simon Says Stamp black cardstock, and I'm now just going to use my Zig Glue pen to put a little bit of adhesive on there, and I'm just going to layer these 3 die cuts up to create some stability and dimension for this sentiment that I'm going to put on the card. I was terrified when I was popping these out of the die that I was going to rip this teeny tiny fragile little die cut, but it held together really well, and then when they're all stacked up on top of each other, it looks really cool and adds just enough dimension there. So now that that is all taken care of, I'm going to start positioning things on my card and kind of figuring out where I want things. So Dracula Kitty there is going to sit down in the corner, and then I'm going to have that Halloween sentiment up above his head. And I am taking this little teeny tiny happy stamp that came in the same stamp set, and I'm going to ink that up with some StazOn Jet Black ink. Now StazOn is an ink that's going to, as the name would imply, stay on things. So it's not water based, it's really, I don't know what it's made of, but it sticks and it stays. So it's a really good ink to use when you're stamping on transparency, because it's very slick on the transparency surface, and that StazOn's not going to rub off later. The trick with stamping on transparency is you need to go down and back up, no sliding around on the transparency. So that's a good tip for that stamping. And then I set that aside and made sure that that was super dry before I glued this onto my craft foam pop-up here. So now that that is on there, and I used liquid glue to adhere that so that I could wiggle it around if I needed to, I'm going to start putting everything on my card front. So I am taking some of these super cute little bat confettis that came out of that Batty border die, and then I'm going to add some 4mm marshmallow sequins by Pretty Pink Posh. And I always put my shaker bits on my card because I am not talented enough to put them inside my shaker window and then put the card on upside down. I have to be able to see where I'm sticking it. So I just kind of move those where I want them, and now I'm just going to adhere my front panel right on top with my little shaker bits all inside. The craft foam is fabulous for shaker cards because you don't have to worry about everything touching to make sure nothing falls out. So now you can see how those are going to wiggle around in there. I think those bats are too cute for Halloween shakers. I was totally inspired the first time I used that die cut. I was like, I am making Halloween shaker cards with this die cut. It's super cute. So now I'm just going to adhere Mr. Kitty and then go ahead and stick my Halloween sentiment right on the front there, and I'm going to put that underneath the happy so that it says Happy Halloween. And I like the way that that sentiment kind of goes over the top of the whole circle and sticks out on both ends a little bit. I think it really just kind of pulls the front together. So then just for some finishing details here, I'm going to go ahead and take my Wink of Stella, and I'm going to color some glitter over his cape and his mask. And I did go in off camera and actually put Wink of Stella on all the purple spider webs too, because I couldn't stop glittering things. It's like a compulsion. I just kept going. And so now that I have that done, I decided I wanted to take some of these leftover little bat confettis and put them on the front of the card to kind of tie the shaker in and just make everything look nice and complete. So I'm going to take a few of these little guys and put just the teeny tiniest bit of that Tombow Mono Multi Glue on the back of those, and just adhere a few of those so that when the shaker bits are at the bottom of the card, it doesn't look completely empty there up at the top. So I thought that was a cute little look. And then once those are on there, this card is complete. So like I said, this is day one of my Handmade Halloween card series. I'm going to do 5 different days of different Halloween projects featuring super fun products from some of my favorite stamp companies. So stay tuned for that. Here is a close-up of that super cute kitty. He looks just like my Egon. I love him. He's adorable. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. I really appreciate you stopping by. Don't forget to hit subscribe and that thumbs up. I've listed all the supplies that I used over at my blog, and you can join me on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. I have a giveaway going on over at my blog, so make sure you click here and go check that out. Thanks, guys. Bye.